The sky was painted with smoke. Ash drifted through the air like black snow, and the ground was broken with fire and ruins. The village had once been alive, full of voices, markets, and laughter. Now it was nothing more than a graveyard of silence. A human traveler walked through the wreckage. His boots pressed into the burned soil, leaving faint marks among the ashes. He had not come looking for trouble. He had come searching for supplies, water, maybe a safe place to rest. But what he found here was something different. Something that pulled him deep into a story he had never expected. The air was heavy. The traveler could feel the weight of death around him. Shattered wooden homes leaned against each other like broken bones. Strange alien symbols burned into walls glowed faintly, signs of an attack. He kept moving slowly, his hand resting on the grip of his weapon. The silence was not peaceful. It was the silence of fear. Then, faintly, he heard it. A sound. It was small, weak, like the cry of a bird or the voice of someone who had no strength left. The traveler froze. His instincts told him to leave, to walk away, because sometimes a sound in ruins was not what it seemed. Sometimes it was bait. Sometimes it was a trap. But then the cry came again. Softer. Fragile. He turned toward the sound, his eyes scanning through broken doors and piles of stone. His heart beat faster. Finally, in the shadow of a half-collapsed hut, he saw her. A child. She was small, no older than 5 or 6 by human measure. Her skin was pale with a faint blue glow, marked with tiny cracks of purple, as if her blood shone faintly beneath her skin. Long silver hair tangled down her back, and her ears were sharp and pointed like a leaf's edge. She was not human. She was something else, an alien, a child of another world. Her eyes lifted to him. Big, bright, and wet with tears. For a moment both were still. The human and the child stared at each other, each unsure what the other meant. Then she tried to stand, but her legs gave out. She fell to the ground, her small arms trembling. Hunger, exhaustion, fear, it was all carved into her fragile body. The traveler's jaw tightened. He had seen many things in his life. He had seen battles and broken cities. He had seen people beg for mercy. But there was something in the way the little girl looked at him that cut deeper than any weapon. Slowly, he stepped forward. His boots crunched against ash. The girl flinched, pulling back, her thin arms shielding her face. "I won't hurt you," he whispered. His voice was quiet, careful, like one might speak to a wounded animal. Of course, she could not understand his words, but maybe she could understand the tone. He bent down and opened his pack. Inside was a small piece of dried bread, hard, but still edible. He broke it and placed it gently on the ground, sliding it toward her. The girl's eyes flickered. She hesitated. Her body shook with hunger, but her fear fought against her need. Slowly, with trembling hands, she reached forward, grabbed the food and pulled it close. She ate it in small bites, like someone who did not believe there would ever be more. The traveler watched. His chest felt heavy. He had not come to be a savior. He had not come to rescue anyone. And yet, here she was, alone, fragile, depending on him without saying a word. When she finished the bread, she looked at him again. Her eyes were softer now, still afraid, but no longer only afraid. The sun was falling. Shadows stretched long across the ruins. The traveler knew night would come soon, and with night came dangers, creatures that crawled through darkness, raiders that hunted for survivors. He could leave her. He could turn away and tell himself she was not his problem. But something deep inside refused, something human. He lifted her carefully into his arms. She was light, almost weightless, like carrying smoke. The girl gasped but did not fight. She simply held on to him, her head pressing against his chest. The traveler carried her out of the ruins. His steps were slow, steady, careful. Every shadow made him look twice. Every sound made his hand touch his weapon. He did not know if enemies still watched from a distance, or if the destruction was complete. As the stars appeared above, he found a small hollow in the earth where firelight could be hidden. He built a quiet camp, set down the girl, and gave her water from his flask. She drank greedily, the water spilling down her chin, but her eyes closed in relief. That night, as flames whispered low, the girl lay curled near him, breathing softly, in sleep. He sat awake, staring into the dark horizon. Questions filled his mind. Who had destroyed her village? Why had she survived when all others had fallen? Was she only a lost child? Or was she the beginning of something greater? Something he did not yet understand? The silence gave him no answers. Only the stars, watching coldly from above, seemed to know. But one truth was clear. From the moment he lifted that little girl in his arms, his life was no longer his own. The fire burned low, casting faint light on the ruined world around them. The traveler sat awake, his eyes scanning the horizon, while the little alien girl slept curled beside him. Her breathing was soft, almost too quiet to notice, as if her small body carried no strength left to waste. Every crack in the night made the traveler's hand tighten on his weapon. He knew dangers lurked here. Raiders, scavengers, even beasts that moved on four legs but thought like hunters. But none came close. Maybe the firelight warned them away, or maybe fate itself was watching this strange pair. When morning came, the girl woke slowly, her silver hair falling over her face. She blinked at the man, at the world, as if she still expected to find herself alone. But when she saw him sitting nearby, sharpening his blade with steady hands, her eyes softened, just a little. The man handed her a small piece of food and water. She accepted without words. She still did not trust him fully. Her hands shook as she ate, but she no longer looked ready to run. Something had shifted in the night. As the day began, the traveler knew he could not stay here. The ruins were dangerous, and he had no reason to believe they were safe. He packed his things, lifted the girl once again, and started walking across the broken land. The journey was slow. The girl was weak, and he had to stop often to give her rest. She tried at times to walk on her own, but her small steps dragged and she would stumble after only a few feet. Each time she fell, the man lifted her back up, never saying a word, never showing anger. Hours passed. The land stretched wide and empty, scarred by war. Smoke still rose from the distance, and the wind carried the smell of metal and blood. The girl said nothing. She only watched him with her large, glowing eyes, as if trying to understand why he had not left her behind, like the others. That night they camped again in a small canyon, the walls high enough to shield them from the wind. The traveler built another fire, gave her food, and sat quietly. The girl, after finishing her share, crawled closer to him. She hesitated, then tugged at his sleeve with her tiny hand. The man looked down at her. She pointed to the stars above. Her voice was small, weak, but she spoke a word in her own language, soft syllables that carried no meaning to him. She repeated it, pointing again to the stars. The traveler listened. He did not know her words, but he understood her gesture. She was speaking of home. He nodded slowly, then pointed to his own chest. Human, he said simply. He repeated it once more. Human. The girl tilted her head, then whispered something back. Her word was different, alien, but she pressed her hand to her chest the same way he had. It was her name. The bond was fragile, built only on gestures and tone, but it was a bond nonetheless. For the first time, the girl smiled. Small, faint, but real. Days passed. They traveled further, crossing broken valleys and abandoned roads. At times they heard movement behind them. Scavengers, perhaps, or enemies watching from a distance, but none dared to strike. Maybe it was the man's weapon, or maybe it was the strange aura that seemed to follow them. The girl grew stronger, with each passing day. She began to walk more on her own, keeping close to his side. She no longer flinched when he touched her arm. At night, when the fire burned low, she would sit pressed against him, her head resting against his shoulder. She no longer looked like a stranger. She looked like someone who belonged. But peace could never last in a world like this. On the 5th day, as they crossed a ruined plain, the air filled with the sound of engines. The traveler froze, his eyes narrowing. From the horizon, dark shapes appeared, machines rolling fast across the land. Raiders. The girl clung to his leg, fear shining in her eyes. The traveler pulled her behind him, his weapon ready. The raiders' machines stopped a short distance away and figures climbed down. Their armor was jagged, their faces hidden behind masks of metal and bone. One of them shouted in a language the traveler did not understand, pointing at the girl. The message was clear. She was what they wanted. The traveler's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, his weapon raised. His voice was cold, sharp, even if they could not understand his words. "You won't take her." The raiders laughed. They thought one man with a weapon could not stand against their machines. They thought wrong. In the silence before the first move, the girl pressed her tiny hands to her chest, whispering her name. Again, her eyes locked on him. She did not beg, but the meaning was clear. She was no longer alone, and neither was he. The engines roared, weapons lifted, and the first shot split the air. The bond of silence was about to be tested by fire. The plain was wide and empty. Nothing to shield them but the broken skeletons of old machines rusting in the dirt. The engines of the raiders echoed like thunder, shaking the ground as they moved closer. Dust rose into the air, darkening the horizon. The traveler stood tall, his weapon steady in his hands. Behind him, the little girl clutched the edge of his coat. Her glowing eyes were wide with fear, but she did not cry. She only watched, as if waiting to see if the myth she now believed in would protect her. The raiders thought the fight would be simple. One man, one child. They were many, and they had machines. Their laughter carried across the plain as they spread out, weapons flashing in the sunlight. The traveler did not laugh. His eyes were cold, his breath steady. He whispered only one word under his breath. Human. The first raider fired, and the ground exploded near his feet. Dust shot upward, and the girl screamed, but the traveler moved with a speed none of them expected. His weapon barked once, loud, sharp, and the lead raider fell, his body crumpling before he even knew what happened. The laughter stopped. For a moment, silence ruled the plain. The raiders stared in disbelief. They had seen weapons before, but not like his. His shots were precise, each one a strike that ended life before the next heartbeat. When the second raider fell, then the third, panic replaced their arrogance. Engines roared louder. The machines surged forward, their heavy wheels crushing metal and stone beneath them. Mounted guns spun, spraying fire across the plain. The traveler grabbed the girl, pulling her behind the wreckage of an old armored tank half buried in the dirt. Bullets and plasma struck the rusted metal, sparks flying. The girl pressed her hands over her ears, trembling, but she looked at him with trust instead of terror. The traveler leaned out from cover and fired again. One shot, one machine exploded, fire lighting the sky. He moved like a storm, shifting between cover, his weapon speaking in deadly rhythm. Every time he pulled the trigger, another enemy fell. The raiders began shouting, their formation breaking apart. They were not hunters anymore. They were prey. The girl watched him with wide eyes. In her world, stories of humans were just whispers, tales told by elders to frighten or amaze. But now she was seeing it with her own eyes, the strength, the fire, the unstoppable will. One raider tried to rush him from the side. The traveler didn't hesitate. He swung the weapon, fired point blank, and the raider dropped to the ground, his mask shattered. The traveler's face did not change. He was not fighting for glory, he was fighting for her. The battle raged for what felt like hours, though it was only minutes. Smoke filled the air, the wreckage of machines burning across the plain. The last of the raiders turned to flee, their engines screaming as they tried to escape the fury they had awakened. The traveler lowered his weapon. He did not chase them. His mission was not revenge, it was survival. He turned back to the girl who stood trembling, her silver hair tangled by the wind. She stared at him, Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Instead, she stepped closer and pressed her small hand against his chest. Her glowing eyes shone brighter as if she finally understood. This man, this human, was not just her protector. He was something far more. The traveler knelt, meeting her gaze. He touched her shoulder lightly, then pointed toward the horizon where faint smoke rose into the sky. There, he knew, was a settlement. A place of survivors. A place where she might find her people again. The girl nodded, her fear replaced with determination. She no longer looked like a helpless child. She looked like someone ready to walk forward, no matter how dangerous the path. Together they set out once more, leaving the burning plain behind. The wreckage of raiders and their machines lay scattered across the land, proof of what had just happened, proof that the myths were true. And far above, in the quiet of the stars, others were watching. Signals carried news of the fight across hidden networks. Whispers spread like wildfire. The raiders had been destroyed. A single man, human, had done the impossible. The galaxy, still believing humanity to be nothing more than a shadow from the past, would soon learn the truth. But for now, on the ground, there were only two figures walking across the wasteland. One small, one strong, bound together not by blood, but by survival, trust, and something even greater. The fire on the plains had ended, but their story had only just begun. The sun was sinking when they reached the edge of a ruined settlement. Broken walls stood like teeth against the sky, and black smoke curled from old fires that had long since burned out. The girl gripped the traveler's hand tightly, her glowing eyes searching the ruins as if she hoped someone, anyone, was still alive. The traveler led her carefully through the wreckage. His senses stayed sharp. The battle with the raiders had shown him one thing: danger was never far away. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Every broken building could be a trap. But then, he heard it, a sound faint but unmistakable. A voice. At first it was only a whisper carried on the wind, but then came another. Weak, shaky, desperate. The girl gasped and pulled free of his hand. She ran toward the sound, her feet striking the dirt with frantic speed. The traveler followed, his weapon ready. His heart pounded in his chest, though he did not know why. Something in that cry stirred a strange unease deep inside him. They turned a corner, and there she was. A woman lay against the wall of a half-destroyed building. Her skin was pale, her body bruised and cut, her breath ragged. But her eyes, those same glowing eyes as the girl, lit with sudden fire when she saw her child. The girl cried out and rushed into her arms. The woman caught her, holding her close, tears streaming down her dirt-streaked face. The traveler stopped in his tracks. He felt the weight of the moment. He had carried this child through storms and fire, through blood and danger, and now, at last, she had found what he thought was lost forever. The mother lifted her gaze to him. At first her expression was sharp, defensive, as if she feared he might still be an enemy. But then the girl spoke. She spoke quickly in her own language, words tumbling out with the speed of a flood. The mother listened, her eyes widening, her arms tightening around her daughter. Finally, her gaze softened. She looked at the traveler not as a stranger, not as a threat, but as something else. The traveler lowered his weapon and took a slow step closer. The mother struggled to stand, her legs trembling. She almost fell, but the traveler reached out, steadying her with a firm hand. Her fingers gripped his arm and she whispered something weak, almost broken. He could not understand the words, but the tone said everything. "Thank you." They made camp among the ruins. The traveler built a fire and the flames cast their glow across their weary faces. The girl stayed close to her mother, but her eyes never left him. It was as if she wanted to make sure he did not vanish, as if she feared he might disappear with the dawn. The mother sat quietly, studying him through the firelight. He felt her eyes heavy and searching, trying to see what kind of man he was. His scars, his steady hands, his silence. Finally, she spoke again. Her voice was soft, but her words, though he could not understand them, carried meaning all the same. She pointed to the girl, then to him. She placed her hand over her heart and bowed her head. The traveler did not reply. He only listened, the crackle of the fire filling the silence between them. Then the girl, her small voice rising with courage, repeated the words her mother had spoken, this time slower, broken, but enough that he understood the meaning. Her mother was asking him to stay. The request shocked him. For days he had fought for survival, never expecting anything in return. He had thought only of getting the girl to safety. But now, here was her mother, alive, though wounded, asking him for something far greater than protection for a night. The traveler stared into the fire. His thoughts were heavy. He was a wanderer, a fighter, a man shaped by endless wars and silence. Could he be more than that? Could he be part of something again, something like family? The girl crawled across the dirt and pressed against his side. Her small hand found his, and her glowing eyes met his with quiet strength. The traveler closed his eyes for a moment. He remembered the battlefield, the blood, the fire. He remembered the loneliness of the road. And now, he looked at this child and her mother, fragile, broken yet strong in their own way, and felt something stir in his chest that he had long forgotten. The mother's voice broke the silence again. This time her words were clearer, firmer, and filled with trembling hope. She asked him, not just to stay, not just to protect them. She asked him to be more, to be her partner, to be a father for her child. The traveler's breath caught in his throat. The firelight flickered across his face, showing the storm of emotions inside him. This was not a request he had expected. It was not a burden he had sought. Yet as the girl leaned against him, and the mother's tired eyes pleaded across the fire, he knew the decision before he even spoke it. He nodded slowly. The mother's eyes filled with tears once more, but this time they were not tears of sorrow, they were tears of relief. She bowed her head low, her hands trembling as she pressed them together. The girl smiled, a rare, fragile smile, and clung tighter to him. The traveler said nothing. He did not need to. The silence between them was enough. Far above, in the black sky, the stars burned like watchers, and somewhere in the cold expanse whispers spread, rumors of humans walking the galaxy once more. But here, in the ruins of a broken world, something far more powerful than fear or myth had taken root. Hope. The fire had burned low by morning. Ashes drifted on the wind, glowing faint in the cool light of dawn. The traveler rose first, as he always did. His instincts never let him rest fully. He checked the horizon, scanned the ruins, and listened to the silence. But the silence was different now. It wasn't the silence of loneliness, nor the silence of waiting for an ambush. It was the silence of peace. Fragile, uncertain, but real. Behind him. The girl stirred awake. She sat up and rubbed her eyes, then crawled to her mother's side. The woman, though still weak, managed a faint smile and whispered something soft like a lullaby. For the first time, the girl looked like what she was, a child, not a survivor. The traveler watched them quietly. Something heavy shifted in his chest. For years, maybe for decades, his life had been nothing but battles, empty roads and cold stars. He had never expected to find a reason to stop. And yet here it was, staring back at him with glowing eyes. The mother met his gaze. Her voice was low but firm. She repeated her request, not as a desperate plea this time, but as a choice. She wanted him to stay. She wanted him not as a protector passing through, but as a man who would share their future. The traveler hesitated only for a moment. Then, slowly, he nodded again. The change was small, but it was enough. The girl laughed, an innocent, bright sound that echoed across the ruins. Her mother's tears returned, though now they were tears of hope. But fate had never been kind for long. As the sun climbed higher, movement appeared on the horizon, dark shapes, Ships hovering low, their engines humming like predators circling prey. The traveler's eyes narrowed. He recognized the design. Raiders. The same kind who had slaughtered villages, who had hunted without mercy. The mother froze. The girl clutched his arm, but the traveler rose to his full height, his scars catching the morning light. There was no fear in him now. He had something worth defending. The ships landed, kicking up storms of dust. Figures poured out, armored, armed, hungry for violence. Their leader stepped forward, laughing as he saw the woman and child. He pointed his blade toward them, shouting words of possession, as if they were spoils waiting to be claimed. The traveler stepped between them and raised his weapon. His voice, when it came, was calm but sharp as steel. "They are not yours." The raiders laughed. They had heard such words before, but this time something was different, because when the traveler moved, he moved with the weight of every human, war that had ever scarred the stars. His strike was not just fast, it was absolute. His first blow shattered armor, his second broke their formation, his third sent fear rippling through their ranks. The girl watched with wide eyes, her small hands trembling but not from fear. For the first time she saw not just the man who had carried her across deserts and storms. She saw what he truly was, a human warrior. The raiders fell one after another, their numbers crushed by precision and fury. The leader tried to retreat, but the traveler's blade caught him and the sound of metal breaking echoed across the ruins. When it was over, silence returned again, but this time the silence carried awe. The mother rose, weak but steady, and placed her hand on his arm. Her eyes shone with gratitude and something deeper. Respect. Trust. The girl ran to him and hugged his waist, her voice small but strong. "Father," she whispered. The word was not taught. It was chosen. The traveler froze for a moment, then placed his hand gently on her head. His eyes closed, and for the first time in years, maybe a lifetime, his heart allowed itself to soften. Far above them the sky rumbled. Ships moved in orbit, larger, heavier, not raiders but something else. Observers, watchers from the galactic powers. They had seen, they had recorded. The whispers would spread now. Humans were not myths. Humans were not gone. One had stood, alone, against death itself, and won. And the galaxy would remember. That night when the stars rose, the traveler sat beside the fire with the mother and the child. The girl leaned against him, her laughter soft in the night. The mother sat close, her hand brushing his, her voice carrying quiet promises of a life rebuilt. The traveler stared into the flames, and for the first time, he did not wonder where the road would take him next, because he had already found it, a new beginning. And somewhere in the dark corners of the galaxy, enemies trembled. Because if one human alone could bring justice like this, what would happen if the rest of humanity returned?